I think it's kind of like touching the earth is sort of like a reboot to your body. And so even just a second is enough to make you feel immediately better. And it's not in your head if your mood feels brighter or you feel less stressed. But over time, if you can make it part of a lifestyle, I think you're preventing a lot of chronic and inflammatory changes to the body.
You're listening to the Wisdom for Wellbeing podcast, the show that blends science and heart to bring you evidence-based tips and tricks for cultivating a healthy, wealthy, and meaningful life. Now, here's your host, therapist, yogi, and fellow full life balancer, Dr. Caitlin Harkis.
Hi there, welcome to Wisdom for Wellbeing. I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Laura Koniver today. Dr. Koniver is the author of The Earth Prescription, and she received her medical doctorate degree from Jefferson Medical College in 2000 and has been passionately supporting her patients' natural healing ever since. She is an artist, author, holistic physician, and internationally recognized grounding advocate, which is precisely what we'll be talking about today. Dr. Koniver's work has been featured in many news and media outlets. She writes a regular health column in the National Organic Lifestyle magazine, Mary Jane's Farm, and is featured as an expert protagonist in several motion pictures, including The Grounded, Heal for Free, The Earthing Movie, and Down to Earth. She also runs the popular healthcare blog, intuition-physician.com, where she reviews medical literature in a holistic and intuitive way. The Earth Prescription is Dr. Koniver's fourth book, and in The Earth Prescription is exactly where Dr. Koniver really dives deep into the science behind grounding. I really loved reading this book and really loved talking with her here because it's not just about going out onto the earth, connecting, and feeling good, which for sure we've probably all had different experiences with to a greater or lesser extent, but she gets into the nitty-gritty literature and science and understanding the mechanisms behind why connecting with the earth has such an effect for us as human beings. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Laura Koniver now. Dr. Laura, welcome to the Wisdom for Wellbeing podcast. I am delighted to be with you here today. So thank you so much for making the space to join me.
Of course. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to get into this conversation, and this episode is actually following on from a podcast episode I did recently where we were learning all about the psychological benefits of being outdoors, and today we're actually going to be talking more specifically about grounding and the wisdom that you shared in your book, The Earth Prescription. So before we get into all of that, would you mind just sharing a little bit about who you are and the amazing work that you do?
Okay. Well, I'm a conventionally trained physician. I just, really square, rigid, went right straight through medical school, started practicing conventional medicine, had never heard of grounding, wasn't particularly holistic either. And then I became a mom, and all of a sudden the world was like, oh, this is toxic and I don't want my kid touching that. And, it makes you over. How do we live in modern society? Like, how natural is that? Do I want that for my child? So it just really opened my eyes to alternative medicine. She was very colicky. She cried a lot. And I took her to the pediatrician and they wanted to put her on, at 2 weeks old, prescription antacids and cry yourself to sleep. And just all this stuff that made me feel really stressed out. It didn't feel right to me now that I was a mom. And I had my own innate knowing woken up. So I just started doing things differently. And, partly because of her colic and her crying, I noticed being outside with her a lot was soothing and comforting. So this goes right back into your previous interview about being outside, being comforting psychologically and physically. And just to make a long story short, over the course of the past 20 years, putting piece after piece after piece together, realizing, holistic medicine has a lot to offer establishing and maintaining wellness. Conventional medicine may have a lot to offer in trauma or in disease. And so I'm not against conventional medicine for sure. But I can tell you, after having gone through medical school, I didn't really learn much about staying well and staying healthy. All I learned about was troubleshooting. So that's not what I really wanted as far as how to raise my own child. I didn't want to just troubleshoot their whole life and then not still know what was going on. I wanted to raise healthy kids. So that's kind of where I got into holistic medicine and how I really got into grounding.
And will you explain for listeners what grounding is?
Sure. When I'm talking about grounding, a lot of people think first, grounding your awareness or your energy on a more like spiritual basis. And that's true and that's great. But when I'm talking about grounding, I really mean the science behind touching the earth. There is an electromagnetic frequency that the earth pulses, the Schumann resonance. It literally has its own field of energy. And when we directly touch the earth outside, our body is super conductive and we resonate and welcome that energy into our bodies, and our bodies are grounded. And we can measure that with a ground test meter. And there's been 2 decades now of medical studies putting the body in a grounded state and seeing, testing heart rate, blood pressure, cortisol, hormones, electrolytes, your brain frequencies, your heartbeat. I mean, we really studied, is it naturally meant to be grounded, touching the earth directly outside? And what is the healing response when it's grounded? So yeah, when I talk about grounding, I don't mean like on a spiritual level as much as I mean directly touching the earth in some way, physically.
And that physical touching has this physiological response that you were describing that's measured, it's been researched, and yet we don't hear a lot about it.
I not one word in medical school residency, nothing, not one word, never.
Yeah.
And it's weird too, because if you think about it, we do know that the body's electrical. I mean, obviously almost most diagnostic procedures we do in medicine, conventional medicine, uses the property of the fact that we are conductive to help monitor health. Like, an EKG, everyone knows, if we want to monitor the health of the heart, we put the little electrodes on your chest and monitor your EKG. That's monitoring the electrical activity of your heart. In a sleep lab, we'll put, electrodes on the brain and monitor brainwave patterns to monitor how the brain, first to rule out seizure disorder, stroke, that kind of thing. That's an electrical monitoring of the brain. If we want to test muscle function, we can put electrodes on muscles. So we know that, and we can even measure like the electrical potential of blood as it flows through our cardiovascular system. So somehow in conventional medicine, we grasp that the whole body is electrically conductive. But that's it. So we use it for like diagnosing things, but we never used it for, why the heck is the whole body primed to be electrically conductive then? Like, is there a missing component? Is that an avenue to healing? That's not recognized yet conventionally, but I hope one day it will be, because we monitor the body and its health through making sure it's electrically conductive. Why would we not think that then boosting the body's, electrical conductivity is an avenue of healing? That is missing for some reason so far.
And that's really interesting, because I think what you mentioned before too, that as you were going through your medical journey, you didn't actually learn that much about staying well and healthy. So I suppose that isn't the focus. And more we are hearing about more functional and integrative medicine and different branches that are focused on, supporting people to maintain wellness. So perhaps this is an avenue that will gain more awareness.
Yeah, I always say, and I hope my lifetime that there's a whole nother field of medicine called conductive medicine, because if every cell in our body, and even non-cellular, plasma and cytoplasm of every cell, if it's all an electrically conductive gel waiting to get some kind of nutritive electrical energy, that should be a whole field of medicine, I think, so yeah, hopefully in my lifetime. And that's what I talk about in the book, The Earth Prescription, because I feel like, I can't just do it alone, but I feel like there's a lot of people who have a lot of information about how our body functions on an electromagnetic level, and yet we just haven't collectively called it a field of medicine yet. But I think we need to soon, because as we all know, we're increasingly being bombarded with electrical fields, and we still don't really know what it does to our health. So, one avenue of it is making sure we stay healthy and strong by supporting our health through grounding. And then the other avenue of it is, in this increasingly like electrical magnetic radiation type world, this e-smog world, we need to know what that does when we're constantly having our electrical fields invaded by exposures that we're not really, it's just not even disclosed, like cigarette smoke. It's not like, it hasn't been disclosed what the effect is on our body. But if we know every cell in our body is conductive, then what does it do to me to have a cell phone on me all the time, or to be standing under a power line? What does it to me?
So there's some gaps in research, but yet, what you describe in the Earth Prescription is like the really rich research body behind grounding. And what you were listing off earlier when you were, basically introducing us to this realm of grounding was the different areas that it impacts. Would you be able to maybe just touch upon a few areas and describe, for instance, you mentioned sort of inflammation and how it affects different cells, just for listeners who are going, whoa, this sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Don't quite get the science.
And there is, like, when I say there's not a lot of research, there isn't a lot of research on what those the toxic exposures. There's not a lot of research on that, but there is a lot of research just paring it down to grounding the human body. There's 20 years of it. So I'll do a little overview, but also if you go to my website, there's a tab that's grounding medical studies. And your listeners can literally read these studies all for themselves. They're all published in the medical literature. Most of them are double-blind placebo studies. So yeah, they're not just something like I'm hoping or I kind of noticed anecdotally. They're really good published medical studies.
And for listeners, double-blind placebo studies are like the gold standard of research trials. So the fact that that we're hearing about gold standard studies shows that this research is incredible and something we can really hold in our hearts as something we can base our hopeful decisions on.
Yeah. So the body responds very immediately to going out and touching the earth and being in that electromagnetic frequency of the Schumann resonance. It immediately, like a light switch turning on, the muscle tension in our muscles is noticeably dropped. So if you step on the earth barefoot, you can instantly, it's not in your head, it's measurable on an electromyogram. Like if I measured the stress in your shoulders where everyone gets their tension headaches, your neck, it immediately drops muscle tension. And immediately your brain waves start going into a healing alpha pattern which is like deep healing sleep or prolonged meditation, other restorative, healthy brain patterns. That is also possible through grounding. And that's pretty immediate because those are, your muscles in your brain and your heart are strongly electrically active. And then it's cumulative benefits over time. So like if I just only have 5 seconds, I still think it's worth it. I still am probably going to decrease the chance I'm going to get a tension headache if I just go touch the earth outside. But over minutes, you can notice pain going away. You can boost your digestion. Your vagal tone gets boosted. Your heart rate variability gets boosted. Your oxygenation of your blood gets boosted. As minutes turn to hours, your circulation starts to improve. Your blood flows more freely. Every little red blood cell has a zeta potential. It's an electrical potential. Every cell that's flowing through in your bloodstream. And so that allows the blood to flow like 3 times more fluid. So less, risk of clotting, and the circulation is enhanced. So, people notice their cheeks get flushed. We've done medical studies to show that even the capillaries just in your skin, when you're grinding through your feet, flush. There's better enhanced circulation, which means every cell in your body is getting better nutrition and oxygenation. So it's not just, just your blood is affected by your blood working more optimally. It's going to everything from your kidney, to your spleen, to your liver, to everything is optimized. And then over time, hours turn to days, turn to weeks, and it becomes a lifetime pattern. Sleep is a lot deeper. Your stress, your cortisol, and other stress markers of inflammation in your body decrease. And we believe because of the electrolyte pattern, after being grounded for hours and hours, that your bones will actually be protected. The bone density will be protected because your bones aren't leaching as many minerals. And so long-term, there's a huge amount of protective benefits as the inflammation in your entire body decreases and there's less wear and tear. So it's kind of like, I think it's kind of like touching the earth is sort of like a reboot to your body. And so even just a second is enough to make you feel immediately better. And it's not in your head if your mood feels brighter or you feel less stressed. But over time, if you can make it part of a lifestyle, I think you're preventing a lot of chronic and inflammatory changes to the body.
Well, that's incredible. And, we all have access to the earth in different ways, because what you describe in your book as well is that, the touching like the grass or, dirt, like the earth is one thing, but you can also touch concrete. Would you mind describing that for listeners?
Sure. Yeah. Because one of my pet peeves is actually when people are talking about grounding and they're like, just go barefoot, because I've dealt with a lot of patients where it's almost offensive to just flippantly say go barefoot because people have mobility issues. People who need grounding the most are often bedridden or stuck inside rehab centers and live in urban environments, like they don't have a safe backyard, and so it's not so easy to just be an affluent person who's like, go outside barefoot, if they have their own yard. Not everybody has that. And so there has to be solutions for everyone to get grounded. And so I have personally tested what's conductive outside with ground test meters, and I have found so many different surfaces will ground you. And you can be living in a city environment, and like you said, concrete and cement are semiconductors. They let the grounding go straight through. So if you find a little patch of sidewalk that you trust, that you can sit on the curb, and have your lunch and just touch it with your hand. And that's the other point too, is it's not just your feet. I don't really particularly like going barefoot. I get cold really easily. So most of the year I don't want bare feet. It's too cold. I like to keep my hands in my pockets and just slip one hand out at a time and touch things with my hands. So much more often I'm sitting on sidewalk or cement, or holding a metal railing because metal is conductive, or holding, if I'm at a crosswalk and there's a street sign and it's metal and I notice it's bolted into the concrete, that is grounded. So I might just rest my hand on that while I'm waiting to cross the street and be grounded. I always think, look up at trees. Their leaves are grounded. A tree can be stories and stories tall, and the top leaf is just as grounded as the grass at the base of the tree. So anything that's living and growing out of the earth, think of that as being grounded too. So I'm much more apt to touch a leaf than to go barefoot or be laying in the grass and getting ant bites or ticks, and you know what I mean? So think that every part of your body is conductive. So hands to me are more accessible than feet, although feet work well. And then anything, and let me just list off some things that are conductive. So rocks are conductive, tile is conductive, cement, concrete, trees, plants, grass, flowers, weeds, brick, patio. So as long as it's a conductive surface and not a dead surface, so the ones that are not conductive that you don't want to have a false sense that you're grounding through, is lumber. Is not living tree anymore. It needs moisture. So once it's turned into lumber, you're not going to be grounded if you're standing on a wood deck. And the other thing, that even though cement and slabs, like in my garage, I'm grounded when I'm standing in the garage because it's just a cement slab on the earth. But if I go on the road where there's asphalt and it's black, it's got that tar, that's a layer of plastic basically over it. So then you're not grounded there. So those are the things to avoid, is just dead lumber and roads that are black with tar. Those will break the contact.
And I think that's pretty incredible, because what you say, people don't have to throw off their shoes and go frolicking, out in a field. Yeah. That's not necessarily
it's fun, but yeah.
Yeah, it's super fun, but not everyone necessarily will vibe with that or be able to do it in their day to day. So when you come in, you can be in the city and, see a stop sign or something, or, a post, and be able to touch that. It makes it really accessible, not just practically, but, depending on people's social norms. So anyone listening can be thinking, okay, where in my life can I just take a moment to rest my hand, or, to take a moment to ground and connect in with the earth, and, offer myself the opportunity of decreased muscle tension and increasing, my vagus nerve tone. These are incredible things.
Yeah, because if we make it that it has to be this bonfire and we have flowers in our hair, people only ground once a month, if that, you know what I mean? But if it's every morning, here's simple things I do in my daily, I estimate that I'm grounded for about 3 hours a day. And here's how I fit it all in. I literally take my coffee and just stand on my front, porch, which is a cement step going up to my front door. And I literally just drink my coffee, and that's a few minutes there, taking deep breaths and having breakfast outside. And then I, since my garage is grounded with it being a cement slab, I go out there a lot, and I just take my laptop out there, and I do a lot of work actually in my garage with my bare feet on the cement floor. And I get a couple